The emergency room at St. Michael's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation at 2 a.m. on a Friday night. I'd been working the graveyard shift for 3 years, long enough to recognize the rhythm of trauma, the pattern of human suffering that ebbed and flowed through those sterile corridors. My name is Dr. Adrian Cross. I'm 38 years old, a trauma surgeon who'd seen more broken bodies than I cared to count. I'd learned to maintain professional distance, to treat injuries without getting attached to the stories behind them. Until him. Dr. Cross incoming. The nurse's voice cracked through my thoughts. Multiple MVA, ETA 3 minutes. 29-year-old male, unconscious, possible internal bleeding. I snapped into action, adrenaline sharpening my focus. The ambulance bay doors burst open, paramedics rushing in with a gurney. But it was the patient's face that stopped my heart. Kieran. Kieran Ashworth. The name hit me like a physical blow, dragging me back 6 years to a time I'd spent half a decade trying to forget. Back to late nights in medical school, stolen kisses in empty classrooms, whispered promises neither of us had been brave enough to keep. Back to the man I'd loved and lost to his own fear. Adrian, his eyes fluttered open for just a moment, unfocused with pain and shock. His hand reached out, trembling, searching. Adrian, is that you? I'm here, I said, my professional mask slipping as I gripped his hand. Kieran, I'm here. You're going to be okay. Please. His voice was barely a whisper, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Please don't let go. Then his eyes rolled back, and the monitors started screaming. He's crashing, I shouted, my training overriding the emotion threatening to drown me. Get me an airway kit and prep or two. We need to move now. The next 40 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Internal bleeding from a ruptured spleen, 3 broken ribs, collapsed lung, head trauma. The kind of injuries that kill people if you're not fast enough, skilled enough, lucky enough. I was all 3 that night because the alternative, losing Kieran again, this time permanently, wasn't something I could survive. When I finally emerged from surgery, my hands were still shaking. He was stable, critical but stable. The spleen was removed, the lung reinflated, the bleeding stopped. He'd live. But as I stood outside his ICU room, watching him breathe through a ventilator, I couldn't shake the memory of his words. Please don't let go. Like he'd known. Like on some level, even in his shattered state, he'd recognized me. Dr. Cross, a nurse approached with a clipboard. The patient's emergency contact just arrived. Should I send them in? Who is it? His wife, Mrs. Ashworth. The world tilted sideways. Wife. Kieran was married. Of course he was. 6 years was a long time. He'd moved on, built a life, done exactly what his family had always pressured him to do, married a woman, lived the heteronormative dream, buried whatever truth had existed between us. Dr. Cross, are you all right? I forced my expression into something neutral. Send her in, but only for a few minutes. He needs rest. She appeared moments later, petite, elegant, with long dark hair and expensive clothes that screamed old money. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands twisting a designer handbag. How is he? She asked, her voice tight with worry. They won't tell me anything. Is he going to be okay? Mrs. Ashworth, I'm Dr. Cross. I performed your husband's surgery. He's stable but critical. The next 48 hours are crucial. Can I see him? I wanted to say no. Wanted to keep this woman away from the man whose hand I'd held, whose life I'd saved, whose desperate plea still echoed in my ears. Instead, I nodded and led her to his room. She gasped when she saw him, tubes and wires connecting him to machines, his face pale and bruised, looking nothing like the vibrant man I remembered. Oh God, she whispered, sinking into the chair beside his bed. Kieran, what were you doing out there? Why were you driving so late? I should have left, should have handed her off to another doctor and walked away, maintained the professional distance that was already dangerously compromised. But I couldn't move, couldn't stop watching her hold his hand, couldn't stop wondering what secrets lay buried beneath this carefully constructed life. "How long have you been married?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. "3 years next month," she said, not looking away from Kieran. "We met at a charity gala. He was different from other men, quieter, more thoughtful." She paused. "He saved me, in a way, from a life I didn't want." There was something odd in her phrasing, something that made me look at her more carefully. "Saved you?" She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my breath catch. Recognition, understanding, and something that looked like resigned sadness. "My family wanted me to marry a business associate, someone appropriate, someone profitable." Her smile was bitter. "Kieran offered me an alternative, a marriage that met everyone's expectations while giving us both freedom." The implication hung in the air between us. "You're saying—" "I'm saying my husband and I have an arrangement, Dr. Cross, one that works for both of us, one that protects us both from families who wouldn't understand." She looked back at Kieran, her expression softening. "He's a good man, a kind man. He doesn't deserve whatever put him in that car tonight." "Do you know where he was going?" "No, he left the house around midnight, said he needed to drive to think. I didn't ask questions. That was part of our agreement, we don't ask questions." Before I could respond, my pager buzzed. Another emergency. Another broken body needing my attention. "I have to go," I said. "But Mrs. Ashworth, if he wakes up, if he says anything—" "I'll have the nurses contact you immediately," she said, understanding what I wasn't saying. I worked through the rest of my shift in a daze, my mind replaying every moment from those 40 minutes in surgery. Every touch of my hands on Kieran's skin, every desperate attempt to keep his heart beating, every memory of what we'd been and what we'd lost. At 7 a.m., exhausted and emotionally raw, I should have gone home. Instead, I found myself back in Kieran's ICU room. His wife was gone, replaced by a different visitor. The man standing beside Kieran's bed was tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and the kind of commanding presence that demanded attention. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and he was staring at Kieran with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Can I help you?" I asked. He turned, his eyes cold and assessing. "Dr. Cross, I presume. I'm Robert Ashworth, Kieran's father." The name sent ice through my veins. I'd heard about Robert Ashworth from Kieran years ago, the demanding patriarch, the man whose expectations had shaped and crushed his son in equal measure. "Mr. Ashworth, I performed your son's surgery. He's—" "I know his condition," Robert interrupted. "I've already spoken with the hospital administrator. What I want to know is why my son was driving at midnight on a Thursday, why he crashed his car into a tree on a back road 30 miles from his house." "I'm afraid I don't have that information." "Don't you?" His eyes narrowed. "The paramedics said he was asking for someone named Adrian. That would be you, wouldn't it?" My stomach dropped. "Mr. Ashworth, I don't think—" "I know who you are, Dr. Cross." His voice was deadly quiet. "I know about medical school, about the relationship you had with my son, a relationship I paid significant money to ensure ended quietly." The room felt too small, the air too thin. "You what? Did you really think Kieran chose to leave you?" Robert's smile was cruel. He was weak, confused. I simply helped him see clearly, helped him understand that certain choices have consequences, that family legacy matters more than adolescent infatuation. "You threatened him," I said, rage building in my chest. "You forced him to." "I protected him," Robert corrected. "From himself, from you, from a life that would have destroyed everything our family built, and I'll protect him again if necessary. He's an adult, he makes his own choices." "Does he?" Because from where I'm standing, my son crashed his car in the middle of the night, calling out for his old lover. That doesn't sound like a man who's made peace with his choices. Before I could respond, the monitors beside Kieran's bed started beeping urgently. His heart rate was spiking, his breathing becoming labored. I pushed past Robert, checking Kieran's vitals. His eyes were moving rapidly beneath closed lids. Nightmare, or something worse. "Kieran," I said softly, taking his hand. "Can you hear me? You're safe. You're in the hospital. You're going to be okay." His fingers twitched in mine, tightening almost imperceptibly. Then his eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they found my face. "Adrian," he whispered, his voice hoarse from the ventilator tube we'd removed an hour ago. "You're real, I thought. I thought I dreamed you." "I'm real," I confirmed, acutely aware of his father watching us. "You were in an accident, you're in the hospital, but you're going to be fine." "I was trying to get to you," Kieran said, each word clearly painful. "I needed to see you, to tell you." He stopped, his eyes sliding past me to where his father stood. The vulnerability in his expression vanished, replaced by something cold and distant. "Father, I didn't know you were here." "Of course I'm here," Robert said, moving to the opposite side of the bed. "You're my son, where else would I be?" The tension in the room was suffocating. I should have left, should have given them privacy. But Kieran's hand was still gripping mine, his eyes silently begging me not to go. "Please don't let go." "I'll give you some privacy," I said, gently trying to extract my hand. "No," Kieran's grip tightened, desperate. "Please stay." "Kieran," Robert's voice carried a warning. "Dr. Cross has other patients, other responsibilities. You can't monopolize his time." "Actually," I said, making a decision that would probably cost me, "my shift just ended, and as Mr. Ashworth's primary surgeon, I need to conduct a post-operative assessment. It'll take at least 30 minutes." Robert's jaw tightened, but he couldn't argue with medical necessity. "Fine, I'll be in the waiting room. Kieran, we'll talk when you're feeling better, about everything." The threat in his final words was clear. When he left, the silence felt heavy with all the years between us. "I'm sorry," Kieran said finally, "for all of this, for dragging you into whatever mess my life has become." "What happened, Kieran? Why were you driving? Your wife said you left at midnight." "You met Catherine." A sad smile crossed his face. "She's wonderful, isn't she? Exactly what my father wanted. Beautiful, connected, acceptable." "She said you have an arrangement." "We do, a marriage of convenience. She gets protection from her family's expectations. I get," he stopped, his eyes meeting mine. "I get to pretend I'm normal, that I made the right choice, that walking away from you was what I wanted." "Your father told me he forced you to leave." "He didn't force me," Kieran said bitterly. "He just made it very clear what would happen if I didn't. He'd disown me, cut me off from the family business, destroy your career before it even started. He had connections at every major hospital, said he'd make sure you never practiced medicine." The revelation hit like a physical blow. "So you sacrificed us to protect me." "I sacrificed us because I was a coward," Kieran corrected. "Because I was too afraid to choose love over money, too weak to stand up to him. I convinced myself I was being noble, that I was protecting you. But really, I was just protecting myself from having to be brave." "Why were you trying to find me tonight?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Because I'm dying, Adrian, and I realized I couldn't do it without telling you the truth, without seeing you one more time, without asking if you could ever forgive me for being too much of a coward to fight for us." The world stopped. "What?" "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer," he said, the words clinical and detached. "Diagnosed 6 months ago, inoperable. The doctors give me maybe 3 months, maybe less." I felt like I was falling, the ground disappearing beneath my feet. "That's not, there must be treatment options, clinical trials, something." "I've tried everything, Adrian, every protocol, every experimental drug. Nothing works. This isn't a fight I can win." Tears slid down his face. "So I got in my car tonight and I drove to your apartment. Except I never made it because apparently even trying to get to you is more than I'm capable of." I was crying too, my professional composure shattered beyond repair. "Kieran, I know I have no right to ask anything from you. I walked away. I made my choice. But I couldn't die without seeing you, without telling you that not a single day has passed in 6 years that I haven't regretted it, that I haven't loved you." "Don't," I said, the word coming out broken. "Don't tell me that, don't make me." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Adrian, for everything, for being weak, for wasting 6 years we could have had, for only being brave enough to come find you when I'm running out of time. I should have been angry, should have hated him for the years he'd stolen, for the future he'd thrown away. But looking at him, broken and dying and finally, devastatingly honest, I could only feel grief for what we'd lost. I never stopped loving you either," I admitted, the truth I'd buried for 6 years finally breaking free. "I tried. God knows I tried. But you were always there in every relationship that didn't work, every empty bed, every moment I should have been happy and couldn't figure out why I wasn't." "What do we do now?" Kieran asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "You're married, you're dying, your father clearly wants me gone, and my voice broke. I just got you back and I'm already losing you again." His hand tightened in mine. "However long I have left, I want to spend it honestly, with you, if you'll have me, even knowing how little time there is." "Your father won't allow it, your wife. Catherine will understand." And my father, Kieran's expression hardened. "I've spent my whole life being the son he wanted, living the life he designed. I'm done. Whatever time I have left is mine, and if I want to spend it with the man I love, that's my choice." "What about the pain, the treatments, the reality of what's coming?" "I know what I'm asking," Kieran said quietly. "I know it's selfish, that watching me die will destroy you, but Adrian, I'm asking anyway, because I've wasted 6 years being afraid and I don't want to waste whatever's left." I looked at him, this man I'd loved and lost and somehow found again. This dying man asking me to choose pain over protection, love over safety, truth over the comfortable lie of distance. Every rational part of my brain screamed no, screamed that I should walk away, should protect myself from the devastation that was coming. But the heart doesn't listen to reason. "Okay," I whispered. "However long you have, whatever it looks like, I'm here, I'm not letting go." Kieran smiled through his tears. "Thank you, for being braver than I was, for being willing to choose this even knowing how it ends." "We'll make it count," I promised. "Every day, every hour, we'll make it mean something." I didn't know then that keeping that promise would cost everything I had, that the next 3 months would teach me more about love and loss than all my years of medical training combined. I didn't know that Kieran's secrets ran deeper than cancer and forced separation. I didn't know that the truth about what really happened 6 years ago would shatter everything I thought I understood. But I was about to find out. Kieran was discharged from the hospital 5 days later against his father's wishes and his oncologist's advice. "You should be in a facility," Dr. Morrison, his cancer specialist, argued. "Somewhere with round-the-clock medical care. Your condition is unstable. You need—" "I need to live what's left of my life on my own terms," Kieran interrupted gently but firmly. "Not in a hospital room, not under my father's control. I need to be free, even if it's only for a little while." He came home with me. My apartment wasn't large, a 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing like the mansion he'd grown up in or the penthouse he shared with Catherine. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was ours. Catherine had been surprisingly supportive when Kieran told her his decision. "I always knew this day would come," she'd said when I finally met her properly. "Not the cancer, God, I wish I could have prevented that. But the day Kieran stopped pretending, stopped living for everyone else's comfort. "You're really okay with this?" I'd asked, unable to hide my skepticism. "Adrian, our marriage was built on mutual escape. We cared about each other, but we were never in love. He was running from his truth. I was running from mine." She smiled sadly. "We found comfort in our shared dishonesty, but comfort isn't the same as happiness." "What will you do?" "Finally live honestly too. There's someone, a woman I've been seeing secretly for 2 years. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." So Kieran moved into my apartment with a suitcase of clothes, a bag of medications, and very little else. The first week was an adjustment, learning to navigate around each other's routines, figuring out medication schedules and dietary restrictions, finding the balance between caregiver and partner. But we also found joy in the small things: morning coffee shared in comfortable silence, evenings watching old movies curled up on the couch, conversations that stretched into the early hours, making up for 6 years of silence. "Tell me about your life," Kieran said one night, his head resting on my shoulder. "After medical school, after I left, what did you do?" "I buried myself in work," I admitted. "Took every shift I could get. Became the surgeon who never said no to emergencies, who practically lived at the hospital. My colleagues thought I was dedicated. Really, I was just running from an empty apartment." "Did you date?" "A few times. Nothing serious. Every time someone got too close, I'd find a reason it wouldn't work. Too different, too similar, wrong timing, wrong everything." I paused. "Turns out when you're still in love with someone else, it's hard to let anyone in." "I'm sorry," Kieran said quietly, "for the years I stole from you." "You didn't steal them. I gave them away. I could have moved on, could have forced myself to let you go completely, but I chose to hold on to the memory of us instead." "Why?" "Because what we had was real, and rare, and worth mourning." Kieran tilted his head up to kiss me, soft and sweet and achingly tender. "I love you, Adrian Cross. I should have said it 6 years ago. I should have said it every day since. I'm sorry it took dying for me to find the courage." "Then let's not waste any more time," I said, deepening the kiss. We made love that night, slowly, carefully, learning each other's bodies again. It was different from how I remembered. Kieran was thinner now, his body marked by illness and treatment. But he was still beautiful, still the person I'd never stopped wanting. Afterward, lying in the darkness with him in my arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Fragile, impossible hope that maybe we could make this work, that maybe the time we had left would be enough. I should have known better. 2 weeks after Kieran moved in, his father showed up at my door. "We need to talk," Robert Ashworth said, pushing past me into the apartment before I could refuse him entry. "Kieran's resting," I said coldly. "You should leave. This conversation is with you, not my son." He turned to face me, his expression hard. "I know you think you're helping him, giving him some grand romantic ending, but you're killing him. He's already dying, the cancer. The cancer is terminal, yes, but it doesn't have to be agonizing. There are treatments, palliative care protocols that could ease his suffering, extend his life by months, possibly longer. But they require him to be in a proper medical facility, not playing house with his former lover. That's his choice to make. Is it? Or are you so blinded by sentiment that you can't see you're letting him suffer unnecessarily?" The accusation hit harder because part of me wondered if it was true. I'd seen Kieran's pain getting worse, seen him struggle to keep food down, to sleep through the night without medication. Was I being selfish, keeping him here? "What are you really afraid of, Mr. Ashworth?" I asked. "That he's happy, that for the first time in his life he's choosing what he wants over what you want." "I'm afraid," Robert said, his mask slipping for just a moment, "that when he dies, it will be in pain and alone because he chose pride over comfort. I'm afraid that you, in your need to recapture something that never should have existed, will make his final days a misery." Get out, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Get out of my home, and don't come back unless Kieran explicitly asks for you. This isn't over, Dr. Cross. One way or another I will protect my son, even from himself. He left, but his words stayed, poisoning my thoughts. That night I found Kieran in the bathroom, quietly vomiting into the toilet. He tried to hide it when he heard me, wiping his mouth and forcing a smile. Just a bad reaction to dinner, he said. I'm fine. Don't lie to me, I said gently, kneeling beside him. Not about this. His facade crumbled. It's getting worse. The pain, the nausea, everything. I can feel myself breaking down piece by piece. There are treatments your father mentioned. I know what my father mentioned. Aggressive interventions that would buy me a few more weeks in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, barely conscious. That's not living, Adrian. That's just a slower death. But you're suffering. I'm living, Kieran corrected. For the first time in 6 years, I'm actually living. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's hard. But I'm doing it on my terms with the person I love. That's worth more than a few extra weeks of medicated oblivion. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist there was a better way. But looking at him, fierce and determined despite the pain etched in every line of his face, I understood. This wasn't about quantity of life. It was about quality, about dignity, about choosing meaning over mere existence. Okay, I said, but promise me you'll tell me when it gets to be too much, when you need help I can't give you here. I promise. It was a promise he would break. 3 weeks later, everything changed again. I came home from a short shift at the hospital to find Kieran sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. His face was pale, his hands shaking. What's wrong? I asked, immediately on alert. Are you in pain? Do you need? I found letters, Kieran interrupted, his voice hollow. From 6 years ago, letters you wrote to me that I never received. My stomach dropped. What? He held up a manila envelope, my handwriting clear on the front. They were in a storage unit. Catherine helped me access it today. All my things from medical school, and buried at the bottom of a box was this, dozens of letters from you, all marked return to sender. Except I never sent them back, Adrian. I never even saw them. I sat down heavily, memories flooding back. The letters I'd written in those desperate weeks after Kieran disappeared from my life. Pouring my heart out, begging for an explanation, for a chance to talk. Every single one had been returned unopened. I'd assumed Kieran was sending them back, that he wanted nothing to do with me. Your father intercepted them, I said, understanding dawning. He must have arranged for them to be returned before you ever saw them. There's more. Kieran's hands were trembling as he pulled out another document, a bank statement, from an account I didn't know existed. It shows deposits, significant deposits, made monthly for the past 6 years, all from my father's personal account. I don't understand. Neither did I, so I called my father, confronted him. Kieran's laugh was bitter. Do you know what he told me? That 6 years ago he didn't just threaten to destroy your career, he actually did it. The world tilted. What? You were supposed to get that fellowship at Johns Hopkins, the one you'd been working toward for years, the one that would have launched your career. Kieran met my eyes, tears streaming down his face. My father made calls, used his connections, had you blacklisted from every major hospital on the East Coast. I couldn't breathe. That fellowship, losing it had devastated me. I'd been told there were budget cuts, that they'd decided to go in a different direction. I never questioned it, just accepted the rejection as bad luck. He destroyed your career before it even started, Kieran continued. And then, God, Adrian, then he paid you off. Monthly deposits to cover the income you would have made at Johns Hopkins. Hush money to keep you from investigating what happened, from ever reaching out to me again. I never received any money, I said, confused. No, but someone did. someone using your social security number and information, someone who set up a bank account in your name and collected every deposit for 6 years. The implication was staggering. Your father committed identity fraud. He did more than that. He systematically destroyed any chance we had of reconnecting. The letters, the fellowship, he even, Kieran's voice broke. He hired a private investigator to track you, to make sure you weren't trying to contact me, and anytime you got close, he'd intervene. That's insane. Why would he go to such lengths? Because he couldn't control whether I was gay, but he could control whether I had the option to live honestly. As long as you were out of the picture, as long as I thought you'd moved on and wanted nothing to do with me, I'd stay where he wanted me, trapped in the life he designed. I felt like I was learning about a stranger. The Robert Ashworth who'd stood in my apartment spouting concern for his son was actually a calculating manipulator who'd spent years orchestrating our separation. We should go to the police. I said, file charges, identity fraud, harassment, interference. With what time? Kieran asked, his voice hollow. I'm dying, Adrian. By the time any legal case made it through the system, I'd be gone. And is that really how you want to spend what's left? Fighting my father in court instead of being together. But he can't get away with this. He stole 6 years from us. 6 years we could have had if he hadn't. I know. Kieran reached across the table, taking my hand. Believe me, I know. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, but we can't get those years back. All we have is now, and I don't want to waste it on revenge. Then what do you want? I want the truth, Kieran said. From him. I want him to look me in the eye and admit what he did. I want him to understand the cost of his control, and then I want to let it go and spend whatever time I have left actually living. 2 days later, we confronted Robert Ashworth in his office. He didn't deny it, didn't even try to justify it beyond a cold, clinical explanation. I did what was necessary to protect the family legacy, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. You were confused, Kieran, damaged by your mother's death, latching onto inappropriate relationships as a way to cope. I simply removed the distraction. You destroyed lives, I said, barely containing my rage. You committed crimes, ruined careers, and for what? Your precious legacy. For my son's future, Robert corrected. Everything I did was to ensure Kieran would take his rightful place in the family business, would marry appropriately, would continue the Ashworth name. But I'm dying, Kieran said softly. Your legacy is dying with me. There will be no heir, no continuation. Everything you sacrificed, everything you made me sacrifice, was for nothing. For the first time, I saw something crack in Robert Ashworth's facade. Something that might have been grief, or regret, or the belated realization of what he'd lost. I thought I had more time, he said quietly. I thought once you settled into your life, once you had children, you'd forget this phase. You'd understand that I was right. You were never right, Kieran said. You were just powerful enough to force your will on everyone around you. But you can't control death, Father. You can't manipulate or threaten or bribe it away. And when I'm gone, you'll have to live with the knowledge that you spent my entire life making me miserable in service of a future that will never exist. Kieran. I don't forgive you, Kieran interrupted. I don't think I ever will, but I also don't want to spend my final weeks hating you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Adrian and me alone. You're going to stop interfering. And maybe, in the time I have left, we can find something resembling peace. And if I don't, then you'll die alone, exactly like I will, except you'll have decades to live with it instead of months. Robert Ashworth stared at his son for a long moment. Then, without another word, he picked up his phone and made a call. Transfer the account, he said to whoever answered. The one opened under Adrian Cross's name. Transfer the full balance to his actual account and close any investigations related to him. He paused. Yes, I'm sure. Do it now. He hung up and looked at us. That's all I can give you, money that should have been yours anyway, and my promise that I'll stay away unless you ask me to come. Is that enough?" "It's a start," Kieran said. We left his office in silence. In the elevator, Kieran collapsed against me, shaking. "I can't believe I came from him," he whispered. "That half my DNA is from someone capable of that kind of cruelty." "You're nothing like him," I said firmly. "You're brave and kind and honest, everything he isn't." I wasted so much time being afraid of him, of disappointing him. What was I thinking? "You were thinking like a son who wanted his father's love. There's no shame in that. There is when that love comes with conditions, so cruel they destroy lives." I held him while he cried, while 6 years of buried pain and rage finally surfaced, and I thought about all the ways love can twist into something toxic, how the people who claim to care about us most can sometimes hurt us worst. But I also thought about the love Kieran and I had found again, the kind that didn't demand or control or manipulate, the kind that said, "I choose you," even knowing the cost, even knowing how little time we have, even knowing it will destroy me when it ends. That night back at the apartment, Kieran was quieter than usual. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "How much time I wasted being someone else," he said. "How many moments I missed because I was too afraid to reach for what I actually wanted." "We all have regrets. But most people have time to make up for them. I don't." He turned to look at me. "Adrian, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 6 years ago." "What is it?" "When I left you, when I walked away, it wasn't just because of my father's threats. Part of it was me. I was terrified of what loving you meant, of having to come out to my family, my friends, the world, of losing the comfortable safety of heteronormative expectations." "I know that, Kieran. But what you don't know is that I tried to stop loving you. I really tried. I dated women. I married Catherine. I built this perfect, acceptable life. And every single day I hated myself a little more because none of it made the wanting go away. None of it made me stop thinking about you. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to understand that when I die, I don't want you to remember me as some tragic figure, some man who wasted his life living a lie. I want you to remember that in the end I chose truth. I chose love. I chose you." He took my hand. "I spent 6 years being a coward, but these last few months with you, these have been the bravest, truest, most honest months of my life. And that matters. It means something." "It means everything," I said, pulling him close. "You mean everything." We held each other in the darkness, and I tried not to think about how much lighter he felt than he had a month ago, how his breathing was getting more labored, how the time we'd thought we had was slipping away faster than either of us wanted to admit. I tried not to think about the fact that I was falling more in love with him every day, even as I watched him dying. But the truth has a way of forcing itself into consciousness, no matter how hard we try to deny it. The truth was, I was running out of time to love him, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Kieran collapsed 3 weeks later. I found him in the bathroom, unconscious, blood trickling from his nose. His pulse was thready and weak, his breathing shallow. "No," I whispered, my medical training warring with pure terror. "No, Kieran, please, please don't leave me. Not yet, please." I called 911, performed CPR, did everything I'd been trained to do. But even as I worked, I knew. This was the beginning of the end. He regained consciousness in the ambulance, his eyes finding mine immediately. "Adrian," he whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just hold on. We're almost to the hospital." I broke my promise. I said I'd tell you when it got to be too much, but I didn't want to admit it, didn't want it to be over. "It's not over. We're going to get you stabilized, get you treatment. We'll figure this out." "Adrian," his hand found mine squeezing weakly. "It's time, you know it is." And God help me, I did know. I'd seen enough terminal patients to recognize the signs, the rapid decline, the body shutting down system by system. Kieran wasn't going to recover from this. We had days, maybe hours. The hospital admitted him to palliative care, made him comfortable but offered no false hope. Dr. Morrison pulled me aside with sympathetic eyes. "His organs are failing," she said gently. "The cancer has spread aggressively. We can keep him comfortable, but Adrian, you need to prepare yourself. It's going to be soon." Catherine came to visit that afternoon, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry," she said, holding Kieran's hand. "I know we weren't in love, but I did care about you. You gave me the courage to be honest about who I am. I'll always be grateful for that." "Take care of yourself," Kieran told her. "Be happy. Live the life we both should have lived from the beginning." "I will, I promise." She looked at me. "Take care of him." "Always." After she left, it was just us. Me sitting beside Kieran's bed, holding his hand, watching him slip in and out of consciousness. "Tell me a story," he murmured during one of his lucid moments, "about our future, the one we should have had." So I did. I painted a picture of the life we'd been denied. A house in the suburbs with a garden Kieran would have loved. Sunday mornings at farmers' markets. Vacations to places we'd always wanted to visit. Growing old together, facing life's challenges as a team. "We would have adopted," I said. "A little girl with your eyes, we would have taught her to be brave, to be honest, to fight for what matters." "It sounds perfect," Kieran whispered. "It would have been. I'm sorry we didn't get it, that I was too afraid to fight for it when we had the chance." "Stop apologizing," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You're here now, that's what matters." "Adrian, I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Don't waste the rest of your life grieving me. Don't lock yourself away again. Promise me you'll stay open, that you'll let yourself love again when you're ready." "Kieran." "Promise me," he insisted, his grip on my hand surprisingly strong. "I can't die knowing I'm condemning you to decades of loneliness. I need to know you'll be okay, that you'll choose life over suffering." "I promise," I said, even though the thought of loving anyone else felt impossible. "I promise I'll try." "That's all I ask," he smiled weakly. "Thank you for these months, for giving me a chance to be honest, to be loved, to be me. Thank you for coming back, for being brave enough to find me, for giving me a second chance at loving you. It was always you, Adrian. From the moment we met in that terrible anatomy lab, trying not to vomit over our first cadaver, it's always been you." He fell asleep then, his breathing steady but labored. I sat with him through the night, memorizing every detail. The way his hair fell across his forehead, the exact shade of his eyes, the sound of his breathing, the weight of his hand in mine. Robert Ashworth came at dawn. I'd texted him the night before, letting him know Kieran was dying. He'd taken hours to respond, but he'd come. "How is he?" Robert asked, his voice rough. "Sleeping, comfortable, it won't be long." "Can I?" He stopped, struggling with words. "Can I sit with him?" I nodded and stepped out to give them privacy. Through the window, I watched Robert take the seat I'd vacated, watched him take his son's hand with surprising gentleness. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw his shoulders shake with sobs. Saw him lean forward, his forehead pressed to their joined hands. Saw him finally, far too late, showing the emotion he'd spent years suppressing. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his face was composed again, but his eyes were red. "He woke up," Robert said, "for just a moment. He told me he forgave me. I don't know why, I don't deserve it." "He's a better person than either of us," I said. "He is." Robert paused at the doorway. "I was wrong about you, about everything. I thought I was protecting him, but really I was just protecting my own pride, my own vision of what his life should be, and it cost us both everything." "Yes," I said simply, "it did. Will you forgive me?" I looked at this man who'd caused so much pain, who'd stolen years we could never reclaim, who'd nearly destroyed what Kieran and I had found. "No," I said honestly. I don't think I can, but I won't spend what's left of my life hating you either. That would dishonor what Kieran and I built, so I'll let it go, for his sake, not yours." Robert nodded, understanding he'd never get more than that. "Take care of him, in the time he has left." "I will." He left, and I returned to Kieran's side. The next 36 hours were a blur of small moments. Kieran waking for brief periods, lucid enough to talk, to laugh weakly at terrible jokes, to kiss me with chapped lips and whispered words of love. And then longer periods where he slept, his breathing growing more labored, his body finally surrendering to the inevitable. I never left his side, refused to sleep, refused to eat, refused to do anything but be present for every remaining second. "I'm scared," he admitted during one lucid moment, "of what comes next, of leaving you." "I'm scared too," I said honestly. "But Kieran, whatever's next, whether it's something or nothing, you won't be alone. You'll carry my love with you, and I'll carry yours. That connection doesn't end just because one of us stops breathing." "You really believe that?" "I have to. The alternative is unbearable." He smiled, peaceful in a way I'd never seen before. "I love you, Adrian Cross. Thank you for being the love of my life, both times." "I love you too, forever." Those were the last coherent words we exchanged. Kieran slipped into unconsciousness that evening and never woke again. His breathing grew shallower, his pulse weaker. The machines monitoring him showed systems failing one by one. At 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after he'd collapsed in my arms outside the hospital, Kieran Ashworth took his last breath. I felt the exact moment he left, felt something fundamental shift in the universe, in the very fabric of reality. "Please don't let go," I whispered, echoing his words from that first night. But this time I was the one begging, the one trying to hold on to something already gone. The nurses were kind, giving me time alone with his body. I sat there for hours, holding his cooling hand, unable to accept that he was really gone. That the future we'd imagined, brief as it would have been, was over. That I was alone again. Eventually, they needed the room. I kissed Kieran's forehead one final time, whispered goodbye to the love of my life, and walked out of the hospital into a world that suddenly felt impossibly empty. The support group met every Thursday at 7 p.m. in the basement of St. Michael's Hospital. I'd been attending for 6 months, longer than I'd stuck with any of my therapist's other recommendations. Something about sharing space with people who understood loss, real, devastating, world-ending loss, made the grief feel less isolating. "Adrian, would you like to share tonight?" I looked at Sarah, the group facilitator, and nodded. "Yeah, I think I would." I stood, my hands shaking slightly despite months of practice. "My name is Adrian, and it's been 18 months since I lost Kieran." "Hi, Adrian," the group chorused. For a long time after he died, I thought I'd never feel whole again. I couldn't imagine a future that didn't include him. Couldn't see the point of anything, work, friends, life, when the person I wanted to share it all with was gone. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But something changed about 3 months ago. I was cleaning out a closet and found a box of Kieran's things. Letters he'd written me during those last weeks, and one of them said, "Don't let my death be the thing that defines you. Let the love we shared be what you carry forward." Several people in the group were crying. I was too. So I started trying. Started going to places we'd talked about visiting. Started accepting invitations from friends instead of isolating. Started remembering that Kieran died so he could live honestly, and the best way to honor that is to live honestly myself. "That's beautiful, Adrian," Sarah said. "How does it feel, living honestly?" "Terrifying," I admitted. "And also freeing. Like I'm finally becoming the person Kieran always saw in me, the person he believed I could be." After the meeting, a man approached me, probably early 30s, with kind eyes and an understanding smile. "That was really moving," he said. "What you shared, I'm Marcus. I lost my husband 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Thank you, it gets easier. Not easy, but easier. Some days I can think about him and smile more than I cry." He paused. "I know this is probably terrible timing, but would you maybe want to get coffee sometime, just as friends? It helps to talk to someone who gets it." Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect myself from the possibility of more loss, more pain. But I heard Kieran's voice in my head. "Don't waste your life grieving me. Promise me you'll stay open." "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself. "Coffee as friends sounds good." We exchanged numbers, and I walked out of the hospital into the cool evening air. I thought about Kieran constantly, carried his memory in every breath, every heartbeat. The grief would probably never fully fade. He'd been too important, our time too precious, the loss too profound. But I was learning to carry it without being crushed by it. Learning that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just transforms. Changes from something you experience together into something you carry alone. I visited his grave twice a month, bringing flowers and telling him about my life, about the patients I'd saved, the group therapy sessions, the tentative steps towards something resembling happiness. "I'm trying," I told his headstone one rainy afternoon. "Just like I promised, some days are better than others, but I'm trying, Kieran, for you, for us, for the future you wanted me to have." The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment I could have sworn I felt his presence. His approval, his love reaching across the void between life and death to touch me one more time. "I love you," I whispered. "I'll always love you, but I'm learning to love the living too, learning to be grateful for what we had instead of destroyed by what we lost." I placed the flowers on his grave and walked away, not looking back. Because Kieran had taught me that looking back, living in the past, drowning in what-ifs and if-onlys, was its own kind of death. Real living meant moving forward, carrying the love but releasing the pain, honoring the dead by embracing life. He'd collapsed in my arms whispering, "Please don't let go," and I'd held on through everything, the dying, the grief, the aftermath. But now, finally, I was learning that loving someone doesn't mean refusing to let them go. Sometimes the greatest act of love is releasing them, while keeping the imprint of their soul on yours. Kieran Ashworth had been the love of my life, and because of that, because he'd loved me and I'd loved him, I would survive his loss. I would more than survive. I would live. Honestly, fully, bravely. Just like he'd wanted. Just like he deserved. Just like we both should have done from the very beginning.